Let's talk about mothers who abuse their sons. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. And I want to talk a little bit about narcissistic mothers who abuse their sons. A lot of people know about mothers who coddle their sons and who treat their sons better than their daughters. And this mother can eventually, and most likely will eventually, become that type of mother. But walk it back to a few years earlier when her son is a child or an adolescent. There are a lot of narcissistic mothers who use excessive or extreme punishment or beat or abuse their child essentially because they want to punish them. And it's not always necessarily related to discipline. And this is especially true if that mother has challenges with her son's father, or just with any man in particularly. She could be driven by anger and rage towards his father or towards men in general if things aren't going well for her. And a lot of times, if her son or sons are the only boys or men in her presence, and she wants them to conform and comply, and if they don't do that, if they're just being a child and they act out in any way, she will excessively lash out at him because of her frustration with the men or the lack of male presence in her life. She can also lash out excessively towards her son if he has, and a lot of young children do this, if they look like their father. And so what will happen is she will act out aggressively, hit him, beat him, spank him excessively. In a lot of times, and I've spoken about this before with young children, children are going to do what they're going to do. They may act out, they just do children things. But that mother responds aggressively. She could be especially hateful, spew hatred towards her young son. She could be neglectful of her son on top of being excessively abusive. And even psychology will tell us that it's a known fact that mothers act out or lash out at their children excessively in terms of disciplinary actions when going through a divorce. And that has been a documented fact that you can actually Google. You don't have to take my word for it. But again, especially if she's partnered with a man or was partnered with a man, she will take out her frustrations on her son. One of the things that can happen as a result of this excessive and extreme punishment and abuse is habituation, which is basically where a child develops like a tolerance, if you will, towards the punishment. So it almost becomes like, oh, it becomes predictable. Like, my mother's going to do this X, Y, and Z to me, and I don't care, or it doesn't faze me. And when a child develops habituation to punishment or acts of violence, is where you have to be very careful, because that mother will look at that and that will fuel her rage. And so she will actually want to give more excessive amounts of abuse or excessive amounts of punishment and things like that that are driven by that rage. She becomes enraged by that child not being fazed or not being hurt enough by the discipline that she's given them, so much so that she will lash out even more so, or take every opportunity that she can to express her frustrations on that child. And that's where you get, that's where you can get into like CPS cases, you get into bruises and things like that, but you get into actually harming a child so much so that they may need hospitalization or can even die from their injuries. And unfortunately, I've worked with mothers who have done that. I've also worked with men who have done that to their children as well. But a lot of times what will happen is that child, as that child then grows up to become a man, what will happen with that mother is, although she will never say it, she has a lot of feelings of guilt around that excessive punishment that she demonstrated towards her boy child. May not necessarily happen towards a daughter, but a lot of times she will start to romanticize him because he is now becoming a grown man or is a grown man. And if she has an affinity, which most narcissistic women do, they are enamored by men and by attention that they get from men. And that's where you start to see the shift with narcissistic mothers treating their sons like lovers, like husbands, wanting to be overly shower them with love and affection and wanting to be the main woman in their life, demanding to be the center of attention, demanding to be involved, almost like a helicopter mom. It is a helicopter mom, but also wanting to replace the wife because now she feels like, I want to inappropriately and without going about it in the right way, she wants to now make up for what happened in the past and wants to shower her son with love, and also wants him to love her, and so that can sort of eradicate that history of extreme abuse, excessive punishment of sorts, and that's why you see that overly latching on. Plus she's sort of replacing him as the man in her life. She wants to then groom him to be the man that she needs him to be, whereas other men may have left her or mistreated her. She feels more control and more authority over her son and feels like she has the power to groom him into the man that she needs him to be. And that's where you get those mothers like what you may see on like Smothered or in other places where they're basically vetoing out their son's possibility of a love interest, and they're demanding to be the center stage. And they even embarrass themselves in terms of their own romantic connections and try to make their son their connection. But, there's typically that relationship between a son and his mother, especially if his mother is a narcissist, runs on a spectrum. And so more often than not, there's a period earlier in his life, not always, but for a lot of men, there was a period early in his life where their mothers were extremely neglectful or extremely punitive, and extremely abusive in terms of rage and anger and physical abuse. Not to mention there are some mothers out there who engage in other types of abuse, sexual and other types of exploitive abuse as well.